Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I am your host, and I'm also the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine. We have an informative and fun show for you today. Previously, we've talked with individual leaders within the profession, both deans and residency directors, but today we are highlighting an organization that is pivotal to the educational process in our profession. We will be highlighting the American Association of Colleges of Podiatric Medicine. This association is nationally recognized as an education association that serves as a resource to students, residents, and practitioners by providing direct access to academic institutions. AACPM highlights opportunities for clerkships and residencies and links students to mentors that guide their career development. We have two guests today representing AACPM. We have the chair, Dr. Eric Stamps, who is also the dean at the California School of Podiatric Medicine. And we have the executive director of AACPM, Ms. Maureen North. Welcome to both of you.
Afternoon,
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, to get started, I would ask that each of you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you attained the current role within the AACPM organization. Dr. Stamps, we can start with you.
Okay, well, Jeff, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate being on your new podcast. And geez, where do you want me to start? Maybe I'll start with my role as dean. I'll start there. So I've been dean at the California School of Podiatric Medicine at Samuel Merritt University since 2017, and I can say that when I became dean, the board of directors of the AACPM, the American Association of Colleges of Podiatric Medicine, I become part of the board of directors. Okay, so I attend their meetings and so forth, and somewhere along the line, the executive director, Maureen North, asked me if I wanted to be vice chair. And I'm one of those who I try not to say no too often. So I said yes. And I think I was vice chair for a year or two. I don't remember anymore. Probably a year, maybe two. Maury could correct me. And then she said, well, are you interested in being chair? And I said, well, you told me when I became vice chair that it's not a direct succession. They can start. And she said, yeah, but we're going to ask you anyway. So I said yes. And so I have been chair for almost 2 years. And it's been a great experience. I've enjoyed it. Is that enough, or do you want to know some more?
No, that's fine. For now, we'll delve into it a little more in a little bit. Ms. North, do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you became the executive director?
Thank you, Jeff, for having us today. I've been with the association and served really in many roles. Our organization, as we'll get involved with later, provides services to those students and residents that you mentioned earlier. And I initially became involved with the association as being a program specialist for those online internet-based programs. From there, I became the director of the Office of Graduate Services, and then subsequently have been in my role as executive director since 2001, I believe. So it's been a very rewarding experience. The opportunity to work with individuals exploring a career in podiatric medicine, becoming a student, a resident, and ultimately a successful practitioner is really rewarding, and I think really speaks to sort of the unintended benefit of being in higher education.
Well, thank you very much. And that 20 years is a lot of institutional experience. So we'll have a great discussion today. In keeping with the Dean's Chat, kind of a fireside chat environment, I thought we'd be a little more informal and let's go by Eric and Maury and Jeff for the rest of the discussion. How's that sound? Maury, I had a question for you right out of the gates. Now AA represents all the colleges and lots of other other institutions, but we really don't hear about the AA itself. And AA is short for American Association of Colleges of Podiatric Medicine. And so can you give us some background of the size of AA and how many employees are involved, and again, some of the responsibilities going forward?
Certainly. Well, as you mentioned, we represent all 11 schools and colleges of podiatric medicine across the country. We also represent a little over 200 healthcare institutions, hospitals, where podiatric medicine and surgery residencies take place. Our membership is institutionally based, so we don't have individual memberships, much like the APMA or ACFAS would have. These are institutions, and therefore we represent the faculties, administration, all of that sort of thing. But the membership is institutional. The organization was first incorporated in February of 1967. So we have a long-standing history of supporting the educational arm of the association. Our mission is to serve as the leader in facilitating and promoting excellence in podiatric medical education, leading to the delivery of the highest quality lower extremity health care to the public. We serve as a national forum for the exchange of ideas, issues formation, and concerns related to podiatric medical education. And our vision is to ensure, through collaboration and other appropriate means, that academic podiatric medicine is a vibrant community of schools and residency programs and other entities staffed with administrators, teachers, and researchers capable of educating and training a podiatric workforce relative to the needs of the public, generating new biomedical knowledge, and providing academically based health services. Our offices we're rather small as it compares to other health education organizations. We have a staff of 7 full-time and 2 part-time individuals. We're organized into 3 departments: the Office of Career Promotion, and that office handles both our outreach programs for career awareness and recruitment activities, as well as ACMAS, which is our centralized application service, which provides students with a one-stop shop opportunity to fill out an application to any of our schools and colleges of podiatric medicine and deliver it electronically. We also have an Office of Graduate Services, which handles 3 of our national application and service programs, one of which is what we call online clerkship, which allows for 3rd-year students to select their outside clerkship rotations in an organized and uniform manner. We also run our CASPER service, which is a central application service for podiatric residencies. Again, 4th-year medical students transitioning, getting ready to graduate and begin their 3-year training programs. And then another program known as CRIP, which is a central regional interview program, something unique to medicine in that we bring together about 85% of the residency programs nationally and roughly 96-97% of the graduating seniors. They come together in one location over 6 days and conduct podiatric residency interviews. Our executive office handles the basic general and administrative things. We also support many different activities and initiatives and implement board initiatives of our board of directors. Within our organization, we also support what we call councils and committees. They would be synonymous with special interest groups. We have a Council of Student Admissions Officers, a Council of Faculties, a Council of Teaching Hospitals. Our deans get together separate from our board of directors on occasion. And so staff support those activities. One of our major initiatives has been the Council of Faculties, as you mentioned earlier, Jeff. We have just now released our newly revised curricular guide for podiatric medical education. Again, something a bit unique to health education, where the entire educational community has come together and determined down to the objective level what every graduating podiatric medical student should be competent in to begin their residency training.
Wow.
I think I've talked enough for now.
Well, that's a lot. And we're going to come back and talk to some of those because it's amazing that the AACPM, with a staff of only 7 full-time and 2 part-time, takes care of all of these things behind the scenes. As a practicing doctor, before I got involved in academics, you just kind of thought it magically happened, and you really didn't know who was working hard behind the scenes to make it happen. So I think it's great that we're getting this awareness out. Dr. Stamps, I have a question for you. Can you explain your role as the chair and responsibilities of the chair and travels and how you represent the AACPM?
Sure, Jeff. I think you heard from Maureen, the executive director. I think she handles really everything, and I'm just a sideshow. You know, my main what I can do, or what I do as chair, besides running the meetings and making sure they run on time, is act as sort of a sounding board for Maureen when she has questions about how a particular piece of legislation or a proposal will affect both the educational arm, us, and maybe the COTH, Council of Teaching Hospitals, how it really will impact us. And so she uses me for opinions quite frequently. Besides that, I try to represent the interests of the AA to outside, well, not really outside, but to podiatric organizations such as the APMA, the Council of Teaching Hospitals, the National Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners, sometimes state societies. So they can, you know, for a small profession, you would think that, or you may be surprised to learn that we don't always agree with each other, and they don't understand what the colleges, for example, require for certain policies and what our needs are. Just like you didn't really know when you were a practitioner what the AA really does, the outside world doesn't really know, what the educational arm, for example, does. So I try to fill in those gaps, and I do it in a way that I try to avoid biasing opinions based on my own college. I try to look at the interests of the colleges and the residencies collectively. You know, if I wasn't dean and I was looking at this, how would I like to be represented? So that's a big part of the job. Yes, there's travel involved because of my tenure coincided with COVID pandemic. I haven't traveled as much as my predecessors, but of course that's picking up again. So we do travel to multiple meetings, of course. Where do I start? The APMA, the House of Delegates, Board of Trustees, the COTH, our own meetings that coincide with those, ACFAS, So the list is fairly long. Let's see. So I just, my job is just to promote collaboration amongst the deans and the other members of the board. That is the mission. One of the goals of the AA is to promote kind of a national forum for exchange of ideas. And I want to make sure that happens and keep everyone playing well in the sandbox, so to speak.
That's a great description. I have a little bit of a vested interest in this because I'm the current vice chair at AA. And so in July, I'll become the chair. And I've been asking Eric a lot and Maureen both about the roles that I'll be playing going forward. So thank you for that, Eric. Maureen, it's become very evident that if you're a student and you're going to go through the process of education at one of the podiatric medical schools, you're going to be interfacing with the AA. Could we take each of those four areas, starting with the AACPM, right, in terms of a discussion to talk about the very beginning of being a student applying to colleges of podiatric medicine? It's different than applying to allopathic medicine or osteopathic medicine.
Yes, it is. In as much as we really are sort of a one-stop shop. Clearly, most health professions have now developed online what we call CASs, Centralized Application Services. Podiatric medicine has actually had a centralized service in existence since 1976. Back in the day, it was a centralized application, but it certainly wasn't online by any stretch of the imagination. And we have certainly moved along with technology. But a student interested in podiatric medicine, or even learning about it for the first time and researching it, can obtain information not only from our colleges and other entities, but we have a series of information and opportunities to really do some outreach and get some good information about what the career is all about, really the depth and breadth of what podiatric medicine has to offer. When a student has taken the MCAT, or at least registered to take the MCAT, the medical college admissions test, they can then come to our ACMAS website and begin to apply. It's at that point that you develop a personal statement, provide all the demographic information in terms of where you went to school and your grades and those kinds of things. Select which of the schools you would like to apply to, pay a fee, and hit submit. And that information is automatically available to those colleges through a various and sundry portals that are available through the service. Students will submit letters of evaluation or letters of recommendation, transcripts, etc., all digitally through our ACMAS service. Once schools have reviewed that information, interviewed candidates, made determinations about offers of admission, et cetera, all of that information is all uploaded and monitored and collected at that one centralized location. It is from advisors to the health professions, those individuals that serve pre-health students on undergraduate campuses, also have access to what we call the advisor portal. Again, this is across many different disciplines, but podiatric medicine is one that participates. So, for example, if you were a health professions advisor from, let's say, University of Michigan or Notre Dame or any of the myriad of colleges across the country, you can actually log in, and if the applicant has agreed to share information, can see where they are in their process in terms of applying, being accepted, et cetera. So that process is successful. Student determines where they want to go to school and begins to matriculate. There are very rigorous first and second year preclinical years. A student will then need to sit for their part one of their licensure exam. And upon successful completion of that, will begin their clinical training. Part of that clinical training, towards the end of the third year and fourth year, will take a certain component of it will take place outside the local college campus in something that we call clerkships. Some of them are local, others are far away. They are 4 to 5 week experiences that students select over different parts of their time there. And clearly there's a bit of a uniqueness to each school as to when and how many, but all of the schools have collectively come together and created what's called that clerkship program. Student will fill out an application and which is transmitted to clerkship programs that they're interested in. There's something called rounds where students fill out their training calendars based on selection by clerkship programs, and clinical education goes on. Of course, we saw a brief respite from that during the pandemic, and are grateful that we are now beyond that, and students are once again selecting and attending those clinical opportunities.
Maureen, I just wanted to comment on that clerkship program, because even though the centralized application service has been present since the 70s, that's a rather new development, developing the clerkship program where they go into a match, and both the programs, be it residencies all over the country, interface with the students individually to decide which month they're going to which program.
Yes, that program's been around for probably 8 or 9 years now. Again, it began prior to it being online. And so there's a history of perhaps not being as uniform as it is now. And if you were to talk to practitioners of a certain age, they can remember standing next to fax machines, making sure their applications were the first one in. Right. Very often it was sort of first come, first served. So we'd like to think we've moved the needle a bit in providing that service.
One other thing I wanted to mention, and Dr. Stamps, feel free to talk about this also. I have found that after the students pass boards, right at the beginning of their third year, they immediately go into this stressful mode of, oh my gosh, now I got to get my clerkships, and I'm in the middle of my third year, and I'm not really sure or beginning of my third year, and I'm not really sure where I want to go. I always try to tell our students and kind of calm them down by saying there are so many clerkship opportunities available throughout the country, because every residency program takes upward from 20 to 40 clerks over the course of a year. Do you get those same questions from students, and are they stressed out when you interface with them?
They are. I do get those questions. And because of that, we've hired a new faculty member, younger faculty member, who not that long ago went through the process herself. And part of her duties are to get to know the students and to help guide them into the clerkships and ultimately the residency positions that fit them best. And so, yeah, we really need a dedicated person for that, who has current knowledge of the clerkships right now.
And we do the same thing. And Maureen, I cannot tell you how beneficial it is to have this online for the students. It really makes everybody's life better. A lot of people listening to this podcast will remember the days of standing by the faxes or making phone calls and trying to lock up the month of October at their favorite residency program. So it truly has been a benefit for the students. And I thank you for implementing that program. So now that the students are going to know where they're going for clerkship opportunities, which in many cases, they're audition rotations, right? That's where they go for a month, and that's very likely where they may end up doing their residency program. What's the next step for AA? It's the CASPER applications, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And again, there's not 100% clerkships at all residencies, but certainly the vast majority of residency programs have clerkship programs as well. But it is a different process because a residency is a 3-year commitment. It is, in a lot of ways, a job interview. And so the process is a little bit different. But again, based on a national central application, we collect demographic information, podiatric school transcripts, letters of recommendation, board scores, and students select where they would like to apply. And that information is, again, provided digitally to all approved residency programs. And there is a bit of a caveat with Casper in that students must successfully have passed both parts of their boards, part 1 and part 2, in order to be in the match, of which we are processing right now because match week is coming up soon. In fact, next week. So once the paperwork piece of it has transpired and residency programs have received their applications, they will review them and offer for interview those individuals that they have additional interest in. Sometimes programs do not need to see their clerks again. Other times they will want to interview students that are coming for clerks for Clerkship Month, but not yet there, or individuals that are not going to be their clerks. There is a limit to the number of clerkships that are clerkship opportunities available, and students tend to apply to more residency programs than they have had clerkship experiences. It's just sort of the nature of the beast.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned, a significant number of our programs do participate in our interview program, or CRIP. And so we then provide the opportunity to digitally put together interview schedules for those programs. Students select the date and time of their interview based on the parameters that have been set by individual programs. And then we facilitate hotel and those kinds of logistical things to actually bring together, which ends up being about 1,200 individuals over the course of those 6 days to come together and interview, to be in a position to rank their preferences and be ready for the match.
Oh, I like that. Just for the audience sake, CRIP, C-R-I-P, is an acronym for Centralized Residency Interview Process.
The interview program.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting because, and Dr. Stamps or Eric, feel free to jump in on this. Every year there's questions about how the ranking programs work, and students have questions, and then they go online and they'll see some forum that discusses it. Would you mind going over the process of students ranking programs and residency programs ranking students, and sharing how that algorithm shakes down so that students know they've matched and then know where they've matched?
Certainly. And yes, that is always sort of the big question mark, because there's lots of buzz out there about how the match works. It is an algorithm based on the number of positions being offered by a program and a student's individual ranking. So the algorithm works, defaults to the student's choice. So let's say, for example, I applied to 15 programs. I got interviews at 10, and I ultimately decided there were 7 that I would be interested or willing to attend. I should be ranking all 7 of those programs. I know I've sort of kept track of where I think is the best fit. You get, after you've been in those interviews, you get a sense of where you might fit best. I may or may not have done a clerkship at any one of them, but I rank them according to where I would want to go. I rank everywhere I would be willing to go, because if you rank a program, there is the possibility you will match with it. If you don't want to be there, don't rank that program. In a similar vein, we encourage our residency program directors to evaluate all of their students that they have interviewed and anyone they would be willing to accept as a resident for 3 years, to rank them. Now, obviously, they will put their preferred students higher up in that ranking. But there is often a situation where a program feels as though they don't need to rank as many students. But students, the logarithm default to the student's choice. So a student can only go one place, and highly sought after students are going to be highly ranked by many programs. So we try to tell programs to actually rank anywhere from 3 to 4 applicants for each position they have.
I think that's good advice. Eric, what do you tell your students when they're going into rank programs and give them the best advice possible?
So first line of advice, if you do not want the program, do not rank it.
Absolutely.
Because if you match, it's binding, and you'll have to go there. So that's the number one advice I give them. And rank what you want. Don't let, your decision is not their job. The student's job is not to decide where they're going. Their job is to decide where they want to go. Let the programs make. So if you think if a student thinks that they may not be qualified for a particular program, okay, fine. But if you want to go there, rank it. Absolutely. You never know.
Absolutely. So this is always a big question at our school also. Students want to game the system. Where am I likely to go? And I default to the same line every year. Rank the programs in the order that you want to go to them. End of story. And if you don't, like you said, if you don't want to go to a program, don't rank it. It was just 2 years ago, I had a student call me frantically after the match and said, "Oh my gosh, Dr. Jensen, I matched at so-and-so program." I said, "I don't want to go there." I said, "Well, did you rank them?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, that's first thing we recommend is don't rank somewhere you don't want to go. So I think that's really, really important. I just want to touch on something more recent. We're having, it's a buyer's market for the students when it comes to residency programs. I mean, there have been past years when we had more students than we had residency programs. And those were difficult times for the profession. But right now we have more residency programs than we have students. And some of the students are saying, I'm only going to rank a few programs, knowing full well they can go into what we used to call this scramble and get a really highly desired program. Maureen, can you talk about that a little bit and talk about the changes we've made now to the scramble so that it actually becomes a match again?
Certainly. Yes, we at one point in this residency process, there was a single match, and then there was what was affectionately known as the scramble, because that's exactly what it was. It became a free-for-all. If you were unmatched, you would obtain a roster of positions that were available. And then it was a scramble, made a stressful situation even worse, and led to a lot of unneeded stress. This whole process is stressful enough. The idea of adding to it just makes it worse. So we developed something known as MP2, or Match Phase 2, that at one point was an offer and acceptance program that afforded some level of organization, because we then also distributed the second round of applications and those kinds of things digitally. But it was very condensed. We have now, as of this year, MP2 has transitioned to a second match because the offer and acceptance was very confusing, and you never really understood what was going on until you found yourself in it. And programs were just as frustrated and confused as students in the process. So we said, wait a minute, everybody understands what a match is. We're going to return to that. And so this year, should students remain unmatched, and you're right, there is sufficient capacity with some, there will be some positions that go unfilled this year. We then reopened the idea of reapplying for open positions. Students are afforded several hours to make adjustments to their applications. We certainly encourage at that point, if you remain unmatched, apply to any program that you might be willing to attend. We certainly understand issues of geographic constraint, et cetera. But clearly, the first round is over, and it's a much smaller universe of potential positions. The information will be delivered to programs. Programs will have a limited amount of time, this time to really focus on conducting virtual or online interviews, et cetera. And each constituency, as we call them, programs and applicants will complete a new rank order form, and there will be an additional match that goes on. So we will again say, any place you're willing to attend and or any student you are willing to accept as a trainee, you should rank them. Once that second match is completed, the announcements will all be made on March 17th, and then any remaining students and or programs will be involved in a much smaller scramble-like process.
Thank you. Eric, I imagine that's music to your ears, because when we scramble after the initial match, it's just a wild time at the colleges and schools.
Yeah, and I in my tenure as dean, I've been fortunate. I haven't had to deal with the scramble. I certainly did when I graduated in 1993. The scramble was very real and very worrisome for students. So it's great that no longer exists.
Absolutely. And over the years, as soon as the matches come out, then the residency directors start calling the deans. We want your best student available and all that. So it really was a challenge for everybody. So Maureen, thank you for making the efforts and having an MP2 so that our students get a reasonably fair shot at all the programs, and the programs get a shot at all the available students. So I don't think there's a downside to it.
Very much agree with you.
Can we move on to another topic? I wanted to discuss the Council of Faculties and the curriculum guide and the collaborative efforts among the colleges. Maureen, would you mind talking about the formation of the Council of Faculties and their responsibilities and roles, and how they've come together to develop this curriculum guide, which I think is really a boon for our profession?
Certainly. The Council of Faculties is made up of representatives from each of our member colleges. There are two representatives from each college, one basic sciences or preclinical, and one clinical. Its makeup is such that their leadership rotates so that if the chair is a clinical scientist, the next chair is a basic scientist, and vice versa. So there's but there is a chair and chair-elect. And so in terms of leadership of that group, there's representation from both cohorts. And several years ago, there was an effort to look at creating a study guide for our national board. And the deans reconstituted the Council of Faculties and directed the council to come up with a study guide. And the Council of Faculties had their first meeting and talked about how curriculum was being delivered at each of their institutions, et cetera, and determined that we really couldn't do anything about a study guide if we didn't know what was going on with curriculum. And it really had to do with how things were being delivered, when they were being delivered, et cetera. And so after much work, the Council of Faculties took a look at what the National Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners was listing as content areas for both Part 1 and Part 2 of the boards, and decided to start there. And so at that point, there were 8 schools, and put together a representative from each school in each of those content areas, and began by looking at the syllabus of each of those schools, and what was unique, what was different, et cetera. In some areas, like physiology, that had within their own national organizations a template of what curriculum should be for a physiologist, they then looked to see what was appropriate and pertinent for a podiatric medical student to know, et cetera. And so over time, we have expanded the content areas of the curricular guide, not only to be more responsive with things like cultural competence and professionalism, as well as geriatrics and other things, along with the standards such as general anatomy, lower extremity anatomy, pharmacology, surgery and anesthesia, biomechanics, and those sorts. We now have a document with 19 content areas, which drill down to the objective level. So this is what a student needs to know in any of those 19 content areas to be considered competent to begin residency training. Because the mission of the schools is to graduate someone prepared for residency training. It's no longer a situation where a college is responsible to educate a student to begin practice, because there's now a standardized 3-year training program. So you really need to be in a position in the year 2023, 2024, and beyond to be prepared to begin a comprehensive medicine and surgery residency program. And so most recently, we had been looking at this document and updating a certain number of these content areas every year. And so it would be sort of a rolling. No content area was ever more than 4 or 5 years from updating, but it wasn't, you could be looking at a guide where a particular section was a couple years old. The pandemic gave us the opportunity to, now that we have a robust way through Zoom to really meet, we don't need to look at calendars to see when we could bring people together, et cetera, to work. And so decision was made and endorsed by our board of directors to go ahead and look at a total revision. And we've spent the last 16 to 18 months doing just that. And at our most recent February board meeting, approved a more streamlined document that has now all been updated to 2023. And we look forward to using that model for the next update a couple of years in the future. Want to make sure that any changes or modifications that an individual school would be making to their curriculum based on this new guide, they would have the opportunity to measure success. And certainly board passage rates is one of those measures of success to see whether or not this cohort of objectives is still appropriate moving forward. But we know that it has met with great success both inside the profession as well as outside the profession in other health education disciplines. The guide has been, we have worked with and presented at other medical education organizations and exhibited at their meetings, and have heard from several folks, including allopathic medical educators, saying, boy, I wish we had something like this. So this is one of those instances where being a lean and mean kind of discipline works to our advantage, because we really have been able to come to consensus on what the education community feels is important for its future practitioners to have.
Wow, it's like an unintended benefit of a pandemic.
Yes, this was absolutely an example of an unintended benefit, and students will be the beneficiaries of that moving forward.
Right, and as Eric will attest, we use that guide when we hire new faculty to come in and teach courses for objectives. Eric, you want to comment on that at all?
Oh, absolutely. And let me just add that I think the curricular guide for podiatric medical education is, a brilliant highlight, a shining star of podiatric medical education. It is, I think, an amazing document. And just as you said, Jeff, that yes, we use it for new faculty that come in and want to know what to teach our students. Students use it to know what to study and prepare for our board exams. We can hold it out to our state society, if we're being examined, say, by the MDDO institutions, what exactly do we teach? Well, here it is. Absolutely. It's just a superb document.
Absolutely.
I'm really proud to have, I was fortunate. I was on the Council of Faculties at the time of its creation, and I'm very proud that I got to participate in that.
Yeah, kudos to the faculty, Council of Faculties, and to AA, Maury. That's just fabulous. A couple of shout outs I wanted to make. One is to Denise Freeman, who is the Curriculum Guide Committee Chair from Des Moines. And I know Shanika Hill was intimately involved from Barry University. So there's a lot of names we could have talked about, but I just wanted to highlight a couple.
Yes, and I would encourage anyone who has any interest in it to really, it's available on our website. There is a list of the authoring groups, and that is a list of incredibly dedicated and passionate educators in their field of expertise. It was a joy, really, to be able to listen to and participate in the conversations and the amount of work that went into it. It truly is a cross-cutting document. There was representation from every single school in every single group. And it really speaks to the level of professionalism and passion, really, that faculty at our schools and colleges of podiatric medicine bring to the table.
Absolutely. We could talk forever, I'm sure, but I thought we'd kind of start to conclude the discussion. Any last thoughts for the audience from either of you? Maury?
Just that as a small component on a staff level, but a critical piece that the AA serves an important role as being the educational component of podiatric medicine. the depth and breadth of what our practitioners do on a daily basis, and what they bring for their patients, is really essential to quality of life. And it starts with the education of those practitioners. So it's a crucial component of that whole family of podiatry, and it's a real honor to have to be a part of it and play a role in it.
Well said. Eric?
Yeah, I would agree 100% with Maureen. I would say that the AA is here to serve the profession and the public, and I am also very proud to currently serve as chair. And Jeff, I look forward to your new upcoming position in July as the incoming chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Well, speaking to both of you, we really appreciate your time, your expertise, and your knowledge on these subjects. Thank you on behalf of our entire profession for all you do. I would like to thank all of our listeners for joining us on Dean's Chat. We will continue to bring the voices and leaders of the podiatric profession to this podcast. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. So cheers.